Let me just remind you again those favoured phrases of senior management. Where is the risk assessment? Have you done your risk assessment? I need the risk assessment doing in that first contact. I can't consider the referral without a risk assessment. What does all of this mean in reality? Make sure you've fully completed the risk assessment form. And what utility does this act actually serve? Well, it makes life a whole lot easier for managers, for auditors, for external regulators. Success equals the percentage of completed risk assessment forms, after all, doesn't it? And remind me again, how often do you use that form to directly instruct and guide your daily practice with the people that you're meant to serve? Okay, so I didn't really need to answer. I didn't need you to answer that question, I'm sure. But how much time again does it take to complete the necessary paperwork to the required standard? Okay, I get the message. Let me just talk for a few moments on what I refer to as the blight of bureaucracy. It's not just me thinking in these terms in this day and age. No, let's go back a couple of centuries. Henry David Thoreau was saying that men have become the tools of their tools. Now, I don't know about you, I find this to be quite an interesting concept. That certainly bears witness for most people these days. But as I said, Henry David Thoreau's talking 200 years ago that the tools, rather than being the support for us to achieve what we need to achieve, now the whole focus of attention is on the tools actually serving the tools themselves. That's an interesting take on how bureaucracy overtakes the situation that we're working with. And what we end up with is an over procedural approach to what should be more of a context specific and individualized activity. Then we get these questions also arising. Is assessing risk primarily a practical activity or is it a bureaucratic requirement? In your individual circumstances, you've got to weigh up the messages that you hear from people around you and determine, is risk assessment really about trying to support your practice and your decision making? Or has it been usurped in some way as a managerial tool for ensuring that audits achieve top marks because the formats have all been completed correctly? Well, I mentioned there at the end of this slide, documenting risks should not be about completing excessive forms. It should be about creating those accessible, reasoned decisions. The more forms you fill in, the more time that's taken away from constructive thinking and observation and actual practice. I will argue you won't find the research around this, but I will stand by that argument that what this is doing is taking us away from the primary activity that we should be engaged in. Though I'm also going to say we do need the minimum essential documentation. Here's another take on another vision, perhaps. We, let's say, don't even need risk assessments so much after all. Who needs a risk assessment when we've got you under surveillance? So in this day and age where the tools of surveillance are superseding the traditional approaches to assessing risks, just perhaps all we need to do now is spend hours and hours evaluating what we actually see in the recordings that are captured by these machines. Staying with the same theme, here are a couple of questions that come up that I think are important to always keep in mind. Do we want our staff to primarily function as administrators or as practitioners? Because therein lies the danger. If we're fine-tuning and over-elaborating the forms, the formats, the electronic formats, then we're developing a bureaucratic approach, which I persistently will argue this will be to the detriment of giving people time to develop trust in the all-important working relationships. It will challenge our true trust in people's own skills. And then we have this other question: does a focus on prediction just serve to underestimate the human potential for unpredictability? If we are to get caught up in this idea that we're going to predict the risk, and if we can predict the future, we can prevent the future risk, well, just bear in mind that one of the most positive attributes of humans is that we're unpredictable. We don't all want to become automatons, all become machines. So we have to exercise a degree of caution when we're focused on this idea that risk assessment is about predicting the future. I've already referenced the PDF handout in the module resources entitled The Prediction Conundrum, but feel free to check it out again. Here's the danger. If we really do focus our attention and put pressure on people into a kind of pseudo-scientific exactness regarding prediction, well, don't be surprised if this is the result that you get. A far from informative, more banal type of assessment. My risk assessment in this situation is, well, it could be yes, it could be no, it could be maybe. If you push people too far into a defensive position, that's going to be the level of quality you might well get back as a return.